Have you ever wondered what happens when a whole society just hits a wall? You know, when the old ways, the old beliefs just don't seem to work anymore. Well, that's exactly the story we're diving into today. We're going back to 6th century BCE India, a time and place on the brink of a spiritual revolution that would literally change the world forever.
So picture this. It's a world that's changing, and fast. You've got these huge new kingdoms popping up, trade routes are exploding, and cities are just buzzing with new people, new money, and new ideas. But just under all that shiny progress, there's this deep, growing tension. The foundations of society are starting to feel a little shaky.
And that really gets to the heart of our question here. What do people do when the official religion feels empty, when the social rules start to feel more like a cage? Well, they start looking for something else. And out of that intense search, two of the world's most incredible philosophies were born.
Now, to really get why Buddhism and Jainism were so radical, so revolutionary, we first have to understand just how big the problems were. So let's set the scene and take a look at the world that they stepped into.
Okay, what's so fascinating here is this massive collision of forces. On one side, you have all this new energy, new wealth from trade, new cities. But on the other side, society was becoming more and more rigid. The official Vedic religion was all about these super complex rituals and expensive animal sacrifices, and the only people who could perform them were the Brahmin priests. So if you were, say, a merchant or a warrior, you might be getting wealthier and more powerful, but you were still locked out of the religious power structure. A lot of people started feeling alienated, and they began to think, you know what, there has to be a better way.
And the first major alternative to emerge from all this spiritual unrest was Jainism. We're talking about a philosophy built on some seriously radical self-discipline and an absolute unwavering commitment to nonviolence.
The key figures in Jainism are known as Tirthankaras. The word literally means a ford maker, and it's a beautiful idea. They are these great spiritual teachers who build a bridge for the rest of us to cross the river of endless rebirth. And while the tradition is ancient, the Tirthankara who really defined it for the modern era was the 24th and final one, Mahavira. Mahavira's life story is just incredible. I mean, this was a prince, born with literally everything you could ever want. But at age 30, he just walked away from it all. He set off on this grueling 12-year quest for truth, involving intense meditation and self-denial, until he finally achieved what Jains call Kevala Jnana, supreme absolute knowledge. He then spent the next 30 years of his life walking and teaching, sharing what he'd discovered. So what did he teach? Well, it all boils down to these 5 core vows, and right at the center, the absolute cornerstone is ahimsa, nonviolence. And we're not just talking about not hurting people. This is a profound commitment to not causing harm to any living being, right down to the smallest insect. It's a principle that guides every thought, every word, and every action. Now, as the Jain community got bigger, they had a debate about just how far to take these vows, especially the one about non-possession. This eventually led to a split. You have the Digambara, which means sky-clad, whose monks take that vow to its absolute limit, renouncing everything, even clothes. And then you have the Shwetambara, or white-clad, whose monks and nuns wear simple white robes, believing this still honors the spirit of renunciation. Now, right around the same time, another prince was on a very similar journey, asking the same deep questions about life and suffering. But his quest would lead him to a very different kind of answer, what he called the middle way. So just like Mahavira, Siddhartha Gautama was a prince, completely sheltered from the harsh realities of the world. But that all changed when he was 29. He snuck out of the palace and saw what are now called the 4 sights: an old man, a sick person, a dead body, and a peaceful monk. Seeing for the first time that suffering is a part of life absolutely shattered his world. He knew he couldn't just go back to the palace, so he left everything behind to find a way to end that suffering. After he finally achieved enlightenment, the Buddha framed his core teachings in this brilliantly simple way: the 4 noble truths. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a doctor's diagnosis. First, the symptom. Life involves suffering. Second, the cause. Our own craving and attachment is the source of that suffering. Third, the prognosis. Good news, there's a cure. And fourth, the prescription. Follow the Eightfold path. It's a clear, logical roadmap. And this is where we see a huge difference in approach. See, the Buddha had tried it all. He lived the extreme luxury of a prince, and he'd also practiced the most severe, harsh self-denial. And you know what he found? Neither one works. So he taught the middle path, a balanced approach avoiding both extremes. True liberation, he said, isn't found in indulgence or in punishment, but in moderation.
So here we have these two powerful, distinct philosophies, both born from the exact same moment of social and religious crisis. And even though their methods were pretty different, they were absolutely united in what they were fighting against.
And when you put them side by side like this, wow, it becomes so clear. Both of them flat out rejected the authority of the Vedic scriptures and the power of the Brahmin priests. Both of them threw out the rigid caste system, arguing that what matters is how you act, not what family you're born into. And get this, they both chose to teach in Prakrit, the everyday language of the people, instead of the elite priestly language of Sanskrit. That was a huge deal. It was about making spiritual knowledge accessible to everyone.
But for all that common ground, their core philosophies on how to actually achieve liberation were really different. For Jains, the path was through intense self-discipline, almost like an athletic spiritual training, to purify the soul and burn away all past karma. For Buddhists, the goal wasn't to burn anything away, but to gently extinguish the flame of desire through the balanced, moderate practice of the Eightfold Path.
And you can actually see how this philosophical difference played out in history. Jainism, with its incredibly demanding practices, mostly stayed within India, finding deep roots there. But Buddhism, with its more accessible middle path, was perfectly positioned for export. And when Emperor Ashoka converted and put the full power of his empire behind it, Buddhism just exploded across Asia, becoming one of the great world religions. That royal support was the game changer.
So, what's the final takeaway? What was the real, long-term impact of these two revolutionary movements? Well, it's hard to overstate it. They didn't just add a couple of new religions to the mix, they completely changed the trajectory of the entire Indian subcontinent.
By challenging the old religious establishment, they broke the monopoly on thought. This opened the door for major social reforms and a whole new focus on personal ethics. The ideas of compassion and nonviolence moved from the fringe to the very center of public life. And this new spirit inspired centuries of breathtaking art and architecture. You can still see it today in ancient stupas and temples. They really kicked off a golden age of philosophy in India that lasted for centuries.
In the end, what they really did was shift the entire center of gravity of religion. It was no longer just about doing the right ritual or making the right sacrifice. It was now about your own mind, your own actions, your own compassion. They put the power of salvation back into the hands of the individual.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? These ideas, born from a crisis thousands of years ago, feel incredibly modern. Concepts like nonviolence and practices like mindfulness are now part of a global conversation. It just makes you wonder, in our own chaotic, rapidly changing world, what can we still learn from these ancient revolutionaries?